P. Diddy has garnered a lot of enemies over the past few months, the biggest being the United States government and its new criminal investigation against him. But his biggest enemy came in May of 2023 when he filed a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit against the alcoholic beverage company Diageo. Why would Puff file a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit against them? He claimed that they were engaging in racist practices. Before we get into the weeds of this lawsuit, let's talk about the company first. Diageo is the world's largest premium alcoholic beverage company with a net worth of $74 billion, making it the 254th most valuable company on the planet. Some of the key shareholders, Vanguard and BlackRock. And in 2023, Warren Buffett, the snowball, opened his wallet and spent $42 million on Diageo stock, which is currently selling for $136 a share on the NYSE stock index. Beyond Ciroc, which connects it to Puff, what other liquor brands do they own? Johnny Walker, Smirnoff, Bailey's, Captain Morgan, to name a few. And in 2017, they purchased Don Julio and gave George Clooney $1 billion to purchase Casamigos. Those last two is where Puff has an issue. In 2007, Diageo was losing $40 million a year on a brand they had called Ciroc. So they contact Puff because they seen that he had a major influence in the lifestyle world. So Puffy signs on to promote Ciroc. Now the deal was he would just get a sponsorship fee for promoting the brand. He didn't have any ownership in it. Sort of like the influencer deals that you would see here, where a company will contact the influencer and pay them a flat fee to promote a product. Same thing, way more money. Puffy sets out on this unprecedented advertising campaign, turns it completely around and makes Ciroc a household name and one of the most popular vodkas in the world, but he has no ownership in it. This leads to the flavored Ciroc variants, peach, apple, coconut. They don't give him any ownership in the unflavored Ciroc, but what they do tell him is you can get X amount of dollars off each case of flavored Ciroc that ships. That's when you see Diddy starting to heavily promote flavored Ciroc bottles and why he was doing that. What Diageo didn't see coming is having to pay him $60 million a year off that deal. Here's the important part. Before Diageo started their partnership with Diddy, they were shipping 40,000 cases of Ciroc a year. 10 years later, with Puff being the face of Ciroc and promoting it, they were shipping 2.6 million cases. Keep in mind, Puffy is a boss, not an influencer. During this time, Puff started to see that tequila was becoming the popular drink that people wanted. So Puff buys the tequila brand De Leon. And Diageo, the company that he has made billions, is the distributor of it. Unbeknownst to Puff, they had also went and bought Don Julio and Casamigos from George Clooney. Neither company had made them a dime in the past 10 years. And then what Diageo did really pissed off Puff. First, we got to talk about supply and demand. If a company controls your supply and demand, they can determine your financial future. If they only make a small supply of your product and ship it to a small number of locations where people can buy it, you're only going to have a few buyers. Diddy owned 50% of De Leon and Diageo owned the other 50%, and Diageo was responsible for supply and distribution. Unlike Ciroc, where Diddy didn't have any ownership, he owned 50% of De Leon. What does that mean? Out of the billions of dollars that Puffy had made selling Ciroc, they only had to give him a few hundred million. They made over 70 billion. But because Puff owned half of De Leon, they were going to have to split those billions with him. They resented paying Puff the few hundred millions for Ciroc. Now it was looking like they was going to have to split the billions with him down the middle. Remember, he took Ciroc from shipping 40,000 cases a year to 2.6 million. Even if he got close to doing for De Leon what he was doing for Ciroc, they were going to have to cut a huge check. De Leon launches and Puffy goes into full throttle salesman mode. Sort of like what he was doing for Ciroc, but on steroids. Sales start to come in and they are abysmal. Diageo only made a small amount of De Leon and only shipped it to certain locations. What locations you talking about, comrade? The urban landscape. And Diageo stopped signing off on advertising budgets. So Diddy decides to investigate with his own people the infrastructure that Diageo had created to play their role in the contract of making DeLeon a success. This brings us to the agave plant. Agave plants are the primary ingredients in making tequila, and they are grown in Mexico. So Diddy decides to send his people to Mexico to see how many agave plants Diageo had planted for DeLeon.
I had to send my people down to Mexico, and this is just to tell you what the fight is about. They went down to Mexico, and when they got down there, they found out that there was 0 agave planted for DeLeon. So there was no plan for us to be successful. There was no equal treatment. The other brands, they had agave planted.
And most of the agave that was planted for Casamigos, whom Diageo had just gave George Clooney $1 billion. Puff is pissed, and he files his lawsuit citing discrimination and breach of contract. This is where it gets really interesting, but I want to recap the company that Diddy is going up against. Diageo is the 254th most valuable company on the planet, worth $74 billion. Its two main investors are BlackRock and Vanguard, two of the most powerful, richest companies on the planet. BlackRock and Vanguard together basically own the planet Earth. Pay close attention to this timeline. May of 2023, Puffy files his lawsuit. In June of 2003, Diageo gives a public response. They say that Diddy is trying to extract billions of dollars from the company, and his inflammatory rhetoric about racism is going to cast a bad shadow on the company. Then they file a motion citing a part of Puff contract that said that this issue should be handled in private arbitration. Basically, they were saying if it wasn't for the claims of racism, this was just a standard business disagreement. In September, the judge presiding over that case denied that motion and set it for trial and made the trial open to the public. Remember, this is September. 1 month later, Cassie files her lawsuit. And the snowball that is currently the trials of Diddy started. Cassie files her lawsuit November 2003. January 2004, Puffy's lawsuit with Diageo gets resolved and they release a joint statement. Sean Combs and Diageo no longer have any business dealings. And guess what Diageo also got in this settlement? Full ownership of DeLeon. And all y'all seem to care about is freak offs and baby oil.